Uh, all right, you ready to do this letters page?
I am.
The letters page for Superboy and the Legion of Superheroes 243. It has L991 in the upper left corner.
What does that signify?
I don't know, but I think they have a different number in every one.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. To do some digging. If I want to be a real letter page expert, I should know what that is. But it's probably not unlike this number that's like on the cover right here. That's C742. And then this is J5271. I think now that I'm looking at it, I bet that C stands for cover. I think J stands for job for the interior. And then I think
letters.
L must stand for letters.
Well, I'm going to throw a bomb and say, I think this letter column is bogus.
Really, the whole thing?
Yep.
In what way?
There's only two letters. They're very short. And they seem to exist only to launch these talking points. Like, these are things that sounds like they wanted to talk about. Like, how can Superboy and the Legion be on its 238th issue? That would mean number one is in 1949. It seems like that was something they wanted to explain here anyway on this informational page. Is largely comprised of this kind of bibliography of all their appearances. And it just seems very specific. I don't know.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, it could be that they made up the letters, or it could be that, I don't know, you think Paul Levitz answered this letter, or who's the editor of this issue?
Al Milgren. Yeah.
It could go either way. I mean, it could go a couple of different ways. Like maybe Levitz and Milgram had these letters asking these kind of questions. They're like, well, now we're going to do this bibliography thing. And they're legit letters. They're just, simple questions. Or maybe they did just make them up. It seems like you wouldn't need to make up these letters for, this 2 inches of the column. You could put something else in there.
But they're like strategically chosen letters that serve the informational aspect of this page.
Right. Yeah. It serves their narrative, and they happen to have them handy. Yeah. They begin by saying they're referring to Superboy and the Legion number 238 here, which is a reprint, I guess a double-sized reprint of the Super Stalag of Space story.
That's like The Great Escape, right?
Yeah. I wonder if, I haven't read it in a long time, but yeah, it would be, or Stalag 17 maybe is where they got the idea, which is a little, I mean, it's not a 60s movie, it's a 50s movie. But yeah, is it Shooter? Yeah, it's Shooter.
I think it was.
So yeah, Shooter saw Stalag 17 on a late show, and then he went out to see The Great Escape, and he's like, yeah, we can put the Legionnaires in this. But yeah, for whatever reason, they reprinted that. Do they explain it here? Several correspondents commented it was the first time they had been exposed to vintage Shooter Swan LSH, and now they know what all the excitement was about. No, they don't explain it.
Some fans even clamored for regularly interspersed reprint issues. You find that hard to believe, but
yeah,
I feel like the people I know, like my uncle who grew up reading comics around then, used to complain about all the reprints. It was like the equivalent of a fill-in back then, and they'd do them all the time, like if they didn't hit a deadline.
Yeah, I never liked the reprints. I never wanted to read that 40s, like when they put 40s stuff and really old-looking stuff, and and the printing was never good enough, and whatever, just looked terrible and primitive to me as a kid.
I kind of liked them, but I could see how, like, if you were, especially if they were in the middle of a storyline, all of a sudden they just drop in a reprint. The same as like, I think what they did more often when I was reading and when you were reading is they do a fill-in issue out of nowhere. And it was usually a subpar issue too, like maybe something they had what did they used to call that?
Inventory.
Inventory story that they drop in.
Yeah.
But this is also, I think, kind of around that time where like every like 5 or 6 issues they do like a giant issue, which is all reprints. Like they would happen quite frequently.
Yeah, I was trying to think of when that period was. There was a period where every issue was a giant. I think it was
You mean
before this.
line wide? You mean for that month or?
I'm talking about Legion specifically. Like they had a long run where every issue was a quote unquote DC giant that was 32 pages or something like that.
Oh, okay. That would be that. That would probably be during the DC explosion, right? Where
I
they
think
increased
so.
the page count.
Yeah.
But I think that was new material, right? They were just longer stories.
In Legion, yeah, I think it was. But I
Hmm.
think maybe more in general, they would stick with
Right,
reprints.
right.
Like I remember, and they had some that were like giant, all reprint mags. Like
Right.
oh,
Well, that would
like
have started earlier.
yeah, I remember getting some back issues of like strange, strange adventures.
mhm,
But they added a thing that said gigantic strange adventures at the top, and they would reprint like Adam Strange comics and Star Rovers and et cetera,
mhm,
et cetera, as a hundred
mhm.
page comic.
Right.
So that actually that was I'm talking about the wrong thing now. Like it wasn't a Legion book where they're all news stories in the giant.
Mhm.
This was all reprint giant. I think a lot of times it was one new story padded out with
Right.
30 pages of reprints or whatever.
Right. I think that's what the Legion or the Adventure Comics ones were like. But like over in like the Superman books, it really seemed like every half dozen issues they would do yet another giant reprinting old stories.
Mm-hmm.
Like they were very frequent.
But yeah, this 238 just kind of came out of the blue. It had a new cover by Jim Starlin,
Hmm.
entirely that those couple issues, I think, of Adventure Comics.
Right.
Yeah, as I recall, it's a big fat comic book.
Didn't I'm picturing like a wraparound cover for that. Was that a different
No, it has a
thing or was that
wraparound cover on that one.
yeah?
It's kind of it.
Like they're either they're hauling things or something, they're all hunched over and
Yeah, I think they're kind of chained up, and Superboy is carrying a big rock and stuff in there, like a
hmm
space background,
hmm
Starfield background. Yeah, this begins with an editorial comment at the top
hmm
talking about how much everybody loved the 238 reprint.
some fans were even clamoring for it.
And he goes on to say, as you can see in this issue, issue 243, we've taken positive steps to make sure that future issues are 100% new or as close to that as catastrophe and coincidence permit. We've got a new art team of State and Abel as a new permanent art team.
Thus suggesting that it has something to do with hitting deadlines, probably.
Yeah, it seems like that.
Hmm.
It seems kind of strange that like they have a big long paragraph of how overwhelmingly positive the response was,
Right.
and then they say we're never going to do that again.
My guess is Jim Sherman probably had a lot to do with that. I get the feeling like he's one of those guys who can't really do a monthly. Like he's done quite a few issues at this point, very few of them consecutive. I feel like there's a lot of artists alternating when he's there.
Yeah, they say that they've got Staten and Abel as a new
Hmm.
permanent art team. That's in quotation marks. And Sherman and McLeod will be doing backup issues slotted in whenever they're completed.
Yeah, and I don't think they really do. Do they ever come back? Maybe
uh,
there's one issue for sure that they come back, and then maybe one of the jam issues they're in.
I think it might be more than that, but yeah, not too much. And then he says Jim Starlin also threatens to return and
Hmm.
conclude his hanging plot threads from issue 239.
Hmm.
239 is the Ultra Boy framed for the murder of his
Hmm.
his ex.
That's right. That's right.
And in the other one, Starlin isn't credited. Is Starlin credited as Starlin or as Steve Apollo in 239?
I think it's Starlin the first time around. I think he kept his name off the second one because it was changed so much he didn't like it.
Mm-hmm. Was in the 250, 251 Steve Apollo things, it's inked by Dave Hunt. Was it Hunt and Starlin on 239? Or was it like Starlin solo?
No, maybe? No, it wasn't. It was it might have been Rubenstein.
Yeah. I remember you showed me that whatever that later recreation ink job, and that was Rubenstein.
Yeah, that's who he wanted for the second one, and for whatever reason he could not do it, and that was another reason why he was really unhappy with it.
Yeah,
because he wanted him, not Dave Hunt.
The editor goes on to say, since there's very little point in spending too much time dwelling on the past, and the reprint was, of course, even further in the LSH's past than our usual letter column topics, let's use this space to answer a few oft asked questions. And then he goes into the Thomas Fotze question you mentioned about the first issue of Superboy and the Legion.
Right.
And he says, yeah, it really was in 1949. You're right. But it was Superboy, not Superboy and the Legion. We all know that. Avid viewers of our program know that. Tim Stoff Reagan of Columbia, Missouri would like to know what issues of what mags feature the Legion, since I've recently plunged headlong into both buying and collecting our friends from the future. I like that he makes a distinction between simply buying, and actually collecting. Because at first I thought, well, what's the difference? But like in the old days, you would buy a comic, you would read it, and you chuck it in the trash. It's garbage.
Recycle it. Or
yeah,
I guess they did in World War II, kind of.
Yeah, or paper drive.
Right.
To feed the troops over there.
Feed them paper.
But yeah, he's both buying and collecting. He doesn't mention that if he's reading them, but he's buying them and collecting them, keeping them, which is what I do.
Probably two of each. Two of each.
Two of each, yeah. One to buy and one to collect.
One to...
And the editor says that's a tall order to know what issues of what mags feature the Legion. That's a tall order indeed, and possibly the second most frequently asked question around our office. The first being, who are all the Legionnaires? And we answer that one with the words and pictures in the Legion Collector's Edition that you can still order from us. Is that the C55? At the back of it, it shows the Legionnaires. That's Jim Sherman section showing each Legionnaire and their powers. Oh, and that's where the Element Lad costume comes from that we were just talking about.
Jim Sherman did that?
Yeah, he did all those bio drawings. I think they're Sherman and Abel artwork.
Oh, okay. Some of them look more Sherman-esque than others. Maybe he drew them all, but some of them he drew looking at other pictures. I don't know.
Yeah. Deadline crunch. They're trying to get him to do this, and he's like doing that instead of drawing.
Right.
Issue 238.
Yeah, it took him a couple months.
Oh, yeah, there's a recent hardcover reprint of that, too. But the editor goes on to, he's just going to list all the appearances of the Legion of Superheroes in the second column here. He says the appearance and publishing history is divided into three categories. There's first the stuff from Adventure Comics, 300 to 380. He doesn't mention the very first appearance of Legion of Superheroes in 247, and then there's a couple of appearances prior to Adventure 300 that he just leaves out.
Weird. That's right. It's kind of strange. He seems so thorough beyond that, though, you know?
Yeah.
Oh, wait, it is listed. It's listed.
It is?
Further down under Adventure Comics, 247. The first Legion story.
Oh, yeah, there it is. Oh, so he's just giving you their very basics. Like you could start with 300 to 380.
Right.
And then action 378, 387. from 378 to 392, basically. And then Superboy and the all new collector's edition. I don't want to read all this. He says, next, we must
Yeah.
list the stories which featured the Legionnaires as guest stars. The earliest of these tales are the first Legion stories and feature the introduction of most of the members, as well as loads of valuable Legion lore. A bunch of action issues, a bunch of adventure issues, a bunch of Jimmy Olsen's, a couple of Justice Leagues. That's a Justice League two-parter with JSA, Justice League and Legion. A couple of Lois Lanes. I don't have any of those. Some Superboys, some Supermans.
Yeah, I can't even remember the Lois Lane ones.
Yeah, they must just be really real peripheral kind of appearances, right?
I would think. So I'm always trying to find Schaffenberger Legion, and he drew that book.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they have to be like what would they be, like one-off stories where she gets powers? They do that with her?
Yeah, or maybe did they have backups? Did they have like Lana Lang backups or something in Lois?
Maybe.
I don't recall. I haven't read a lot of Lois Lane.
You're missing out, buddy. Some good stories.
Yeah. I mean, I got the what was it called? The Showcase Presents big paperback.
Superman Family.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are good.
They had them back and forth.
Yeah, those are good.
The editor says collectors should be warned that some of these stories contain just a panel or two of the Legion, while others are as important to the annals as any series story. Mm-hmm. Decide exactly how complete you want your collection to be before you start shopping. I want it to be totally complete. I'm going to get all these. I'm going to get the Lois's. I'm going to get the World's Finest.
Right.
The Jimmy Olsen's. Where the panel that just has like Mon-El's left hand in it, buying that.
Yeah, I bet what if they're counting like single panels of characters walking by the statues, like the Superman Museum.
Oh yeah, like you're in the Superman Museum and you walk by in the background, there's a photograph of Mon-El, who's barely a Legionnaire most of the time.
No photographs. That's not how they roll back then. It's always like full size replicas, like dummies dressed up like them or robots. Mortimer was really into that.
Yeah, he really wants to. Yeah, he wants to build up the legacy and mythology of these people. They're bigger than life. They're heroes. Finally, here's a list of magazines that reprint stories listed in either of the above sections. A bunch of reprints. 80-page giant number 11, whatever that is. Limited collector's edition, C49 is the Mordrew reprint book.
Well, I think one of the 80-page giant, because there's an actual proper series called 80-page giant. It's confusing. Like all the annuals back then were 80-page giants. And then, like, there was a series that just changes its name with every issue of 80-page giants. And then later, random issues of the comics would be 80-page giants.
Right. I kind of recall a Superboy comic that said, I don't know if it's a 100-page giant. And it has, but it has a Superboy numbering and it has a 100-page Super Spectacular numbering as well. I think it has both. Oh. Just to make life crazy. Like it's kind of yellow, and he's like, is he lifting up a giant barbell, or that's a different one?
Is that Superboy or Superman? I don't know. They definitely had like, I think at least one issue was dedicated to them. Isn't there that one that has a redrawing of like the Lightning Saga cover? Where they're all holding up the wands. Oh, I don't recognize that one.
Yeah, see, like that is, it says DC 21.
Oh,
right here.
No.
And then this one says DC 12 and 185.
Are these look old, newer? Are these like the 70s?
Yeah, they've got to be early. It's like it's Superboy 185, so it's
Are
um,
the ones from the 60s 80 page giants?
yeah, I think in the 70s they upped their game and now they've got 100-page comics.
That is unusual. Usually they're shrinking it down
Yeah.
as time goes.
Yeah, see this one, this yellow one, the indicia says 100-page super spectacular, volume 1, number DC 21.
Oh boy.
So I'm going to look at this other one that has both a Superboy number and um, a DC 12 on it. These are, I paid a lot for these 100-pagers.
I'm afraid to ask.
I think that yellow one cost me $40.
Dang. It looks good from here.
Yeah, this red one's more beat up. It didn't cost that much. This is just Superboy number 185. But somewhere along the line, they started calling them by this DC dash number.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, kind of confusing, kind of weird.
I think those thicker ones kind of hold up a little better than the regular, stapled comics.
Kind of. These are all kind of brittle along the where the fold is on the spine. Okay. I mean, it's just held together with glue. I could see them actually being less sturdy than a stapled comic book.
I just know like the stack of comics that have survived my young childhood. The ones in the best shape are like the 64-page ones, the annuals.
Oh yeah, from the 80s. I think those are kind of they held together better. I know. Looking through the bins, I've seen a lot of the covers for these big books just floating loose. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I'm flipping through one of those Lois Lanes, and there's just like a flat. Lois Lane is remembering Lori the mermaid, remembering something involving the Legion of Substitute Heroes. Like it's very far removed.
Wait, Lois Lane is having a remembrance of Lori Lamaris, and Lori Lamaris is remembering the Legion of Substitute Heroes. That's a memory within a memory.
Yeah. Okay. No, what it actually is she's telepathically talking to Lois and telling her that you were being monitored by the Legion of Superheroes and the Legion of Substitute Heroes. They observed your predicament from the future. They alerted Night Girl and sent her to your assistance. So maybe Night Girl's in here somewhere.
That's kind of cool.
In issue 50, I don't know what's inside of it, but on the cover we have Lois. I don't know if you can see this. She's in the time bubble.
Oh yeah.
Looks like she's going back to yell at Superman for dating Lana in the fit when he was a kid or something. That does not seem fair.
It doesn't seem fair. Hey, you teenagers, get off each other. That's my man, my boy.
Cheating on me in the past.
Well, do you think that time bubble is the only link to the Legion in that issue?
Well, I kind of like flipped through it super fast, and that was the only thing I saw.
Huh.
Like,
do you remember that fan website? Or it was a list. It was the Anal Retentive Legion Collector or something like that. And this guy, he listed, like it was an ongoing thing, like 20 years ago when I was like really following Legion stuff, or more like 24 years ago when I was really involved in this stuff online. Like this guy, he was still out there, and he was like, every time there would be an appearance of like Time Trapper and Super Friends, or a time bubble in Smallville.
Was it you? This was you?
It was not me.
Oh, okay.
It was a guy who was way more invested in it than I ever was. But he would just add to the list all the time. He was constantly researching and just forming this complete list of every time a Legion concept even appeared in any book. And he would put like, I remember one where they're like, and here's a weird one. It's Pickle number of whatever by Dylan Horrocks, has Saturn Girl in it,
Wow.
And this is back in the days when like a Fantagraphics comic or an indie book was like the weirdest thing on earth to like a superhero fan, and for
Hmm.
to have that kind of like this was, I don't know. I always found that to be a little strange. Like that's not that weird for Dylan Horrocks to draw a superhero and put it
Is
in his
that
comic book.
was that part of Hicksville? In what context would he have
It must have been.
used the character? Yeah, in the comic book library,
Yes, probably something like that.
somebody was reading a comic with Supergirl
Or
Saturn Girl.
she just appeared in a group of heroes or something.
Mhm.
Yeah, like a real
Mhm.
person. But I just remembered that there was an issue of Dylan Horrocks's pickle on the anal retentive checklist.
Did they ever show up? They never showed up in like Love and Rockets, did they?
No,
I
I don't
mean,
think
not
so.
not overtly anyway. Some of those characters seem inspired by them, but
Yeah, I don't remember any kind of outside stuff showing up in there. Jaime Hernandez did those Who's Who entries, but I don't know that he ever put them in his comic.
right. Some of the costume. There was some period in Penny's century where she kind of looked like she could have been a Legionnaire.
Yeah. She had like a little short skirt, kind of looked like the first appearance Saturn Girl costume or something.
Mm-hmm.
So that's that, I guess. They say next issue, back to our regularly scheduled letters page and part 4 of Earth War. Be there, and it's signed Al and Paul. So they took 2 guys to make this up, I guess. Make up the letters, and then make up the list.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of a boring letters page. We talked a lot about it, though.
Yeah.
This one guy, Thomas Stoffregan, is from Columbia, Missouri. How far away is that from your house?
It's not close.
Is that the capital of Missouri?
No, that would be Jefferson City.
Oh, that's right.